I'm Doug Filorowski. I'm here today with Megan Borowski, senior meteorologist at the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network, which operates Florida storms. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, I just want to talk with you today about hurricane science and the business of forecasting.
Sure
I want
thing.
to have a high-level discussion. So I want to start off by asking you what the ingredients are of a hurricane. What needs to exist in order for a hurricane to form?
Right. So the very basic view of it would be you need some sort of disturbance in the atmosphere, right? You need some upward vertical motion to help get thunderstorms brewing, because that's
Mhm.
the basis of a tropical cyclone, as you start off with thunderstorm activity and disturbance. You need warm sea surface temperatures, generally 80 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. To help provide fuel for those developing thunderstorms. And in the atmosphere, as you actually go up from the surface and you go up through the different levels of the atmosphere,
Mhm.
you can have winds that have different speeds and from different directions. You want that to be uniform. You want uniform speed and direction or low wind shear as you go through the column of the atmosphere, because that also helps the thunderstorms to stay organized. If you have elevated wind shear, that can scramble things up and help to dissipate any storm that might be brewing. So an existing disturbance or some sort of wave
Something
coming
went
off the
wrong.
coast of
Please
Africa,
try again.
um, warm sea surface temperatures and limited wind shear. Very broad brush view of what we
Okay.
need.
All right. Well, that gets us started anyway in our
Mhm.
discussion. So with that in mind, how does a meteorologist such as yourself
Mhm.
create a forecast? How do you know what exists out there and where the storm might be headed, how
Mhm.
strong it's going to be? Can you discuss that a little bit?
Well, first of all, to kind of you want to start out looking to see if there's going to be development in the Atlantic basin. So you'll look at things. You might look at climate signals, like you might look at a phase of something called the Madden-Julian oscillation. You'll look at thunderstorm activity over the sub-Saharan African desert, where the winds are converging and we get thunderstorms. You look at those things to see, okay, are we going to have a disturbance maybe that, or are things going to be conducive for thunderstorms to start to develop over the tropical Atlantic? You'll also monitor throughout the season sea surface temperatures just to see, okay, where are there areas where it would be more favorable for a storm to track? So that's what you're looking at every day. And then the National Hurricane Center actually puts out a great product. It's a 2-day tropical outlook and a 7-day tropical outlook. And they'll actually highlight an area where they might think some sort of development might occur. Um, so we start out there. Then, if we start to have thunderstorms developing, we'll monitor on satellite data and radar data if we're close enough to land to the contiguous United States. But monitor conditions over the tropical Atlantic basin and see, are there any locations that are starting to show signs that thunderstorms and a disturbance might be developing. So monitoring the current state of the atmosphere, and then also with data that have been collected by satellites or by airplane reconnaissance data, things like that. We'll actually use that data to populate weather models and then run those weather models to put in or to develop a forecasted scenario of what's going to happen down the line. We look at a lot of models. You can't just rely on one run of a particular model or run one model itself. We look at a lot of different things there to kind of get a glimpse of what might happen. And then it's
Yeah.
just monitoring things as the situation unfolds.
Yeah, I've seen those spaghetti models.
Hmm.
There's got to be at least a dozen different models, and I noticed that we seem to take sort of the consensus of all the models, sort of the middle track, and so yeah, that's thank you for that information. Yeah, that's kind of how how it works, I guess.
Hmm.
And you're able to provide us with your best guess, I guess, on a track, and then as we as homeowners, residents here in Florida, get a look at that. I've noticed, it is Mother Nature, and she does
Hmm.
have a mind of her own.
Yep.
Sometimes the forecasts change. Maybe the storm is ends up being weaker or stronger than we thought, and maybe the track shifts a little bit. So, what typically goes into those sorts of changes and,
Changes.
and
Yeah.
revisions? Yeah.
Yeah, so, unfortunately, we can try to capture the laws of physics and everything that's going on in the atmosphere with mathematical equations, and we can try to put all of that into computers. But ultimately, there are going to be errors, there are going to be estimations, and that's what we see, especially as we go forward in time with the forecast of a forecast for 5 days out is likely to be less accurate than a forecast for maybe 48 hours in the future. So, of course, as the storm is developing, we might not have as much information about it as well. So that might lead to errors in the models as well. And also, as the storm strengthens or weakens, that actually impacts how it gets steered and which levels of the atmosphere can help to steer it. And there's a lot of different things that might go on to impact that with the forecast track. Something else to keep in mind too is rapid intensification. That's kind of been the buzzword for the past several hurricane seasons. We've seen it really increase over the past several seasons. And I will say that,
And what causes that? Is it just that the water is warmer than it has been historically, or what causes that rapid intensification?
well, the research is still being done, Doug. So we're
Hmm.
we're right at the cutting edge of science there with that. And the models really aren't great at capturing it either. I will say that if you do have warmer sea surface temperatures and limited wind shear, that's going to prime the pump for maybe the storm will rapidly intensify before it makes landfall. I will say the human meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center have been very good at identifying scenarios where the storm has a good chance of rapidly intensifying. In other cases, computer models have not been that great at
Hmm.
capturing that.
Yeah.
But really, that's all to say there's a lot of models aren't 100% accurate, and
Hmm.
so we're going to see wobbles in the forecast track and in the intensity guidance as we get further out in time with the forecast. So I would almost say expect the forecast to change.
Right.
As we get closer to landfall, that's when we're really honing on in on the target, so to speak. But especially, several days out from land impacts, expect the forecast to
Hmm.
change.
But as somebody who's lived here in Florida for 25 years, and I can tell you that the science has gotten a lot
Oh,
better about it.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So the other thing people wonder is, I think a lot of us can remember a Labor Day sort of gone awry because of a hurricane here in Florida. It seems like we get a lot that time of year. Is there any particular reason why September is sort of the hurricane month?
Well, you got to think about we've had all the summertime heating, right? And so the ocean has been able to really warm up. We have those waves coming off the coast of Africa. We've had all summer for everything to kind of start to align. And then we see our peak in hurricane season. I think it's around September 10th. And that's really the ocean and the atmosphere is catching up to the fact that we reached the summer solstice a couple months prior. It's all about that lag time between astronomical summer and then, the ocean atmosphere complex catching up to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It just things just sort of heat up as we go along, and then
Hmm.
fortunately, at some point, we do make the turn towards winter and things
Toward
calm down.
calmer conditions, yes.
All right, so a lot of our customers want to know, what's headed their way. What would you recommend for them in terms of staying connected and knowing, what these forecasts are? I know Florida Storms
Hmm.
has an app,
Yep,
and you put out a lot of different products. So, can you tell us a little bit about Florida Storms and then what
absolutely.
else they can do to stay informed?
Great. So, yes, so we're the Florida Public Radio Emergency Network, and our brand name also is Florida Storms. And we're a group of meteorologists and journalists housed at Weimer Hall on the University of Florida campus. And we provide content for all of our partners across the state of Florida, anywhere from Pensacola all the way down to Key West, public media radio stations and television stations. And our focus is on emergency preparedness and informing the audience about things like hurricanes and severe weather. And unfortunately, this past winter we had snow, and so informing about those extreme weather events and how to stay safe. So definitely download the Florida Storms app. That has a It's a great resource. It has an interactive radar map that you can actually toggle on and off hurricane tracks, the spaghetti models, radar, satellite, temperature data, all of that just in one map, which is great. You can enable alerts for your specific location. I particularly like in the map, you can actually enable your location, and the app will send you an alert if lightning has been detected within a 10-mile radius, which is great
Oh, that's
because
cool.
we all know those thunderstorms can sneak up on you in the summertime. And
Yeah.
there's also other resources for evacuations and knowing your flood zone and your flood risk. So definitely the app, listening to your local public radio station or watching your local PBS station for that weather content when a storm is brewing or impacting, slated to impact our area. So definitely that. And I also say just know your sources, especially on social media. There's a lot of hype that goes around as well, saying, Cat 5 hurricane going to hit us in 2 months. Well, nobody can forecast that. So trusting your sources. You can follow us on social media, Florida Storms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Mhm.
And also official offices like the National Hurricane Center and your local National Weather Service office. In Florida, we've got NWS, Pensacola, Mobile, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Melbourne, Miami, and Key West. So those are the ones to follow based on your particular region. I would definitely follow them. They put out a lot of great communication and tips too on how to stay safe and stay prepared.
Awesome, Megan. Thank you so much. That's all great
Absolutely.
information.